I try to tell these kids, go play. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because those are the ones you learn and you won't make them again. Hey, I'm 18, 19, and I'm competing against a dude who's 23. I think I'm as good of a player, but I see why. He's been in the weight room for 4 years. You're competing against a man, not a kid any longer. I retired once a year at least, where I'm like, this is it. I'm going home. And then when I'd stop worrying about, my performance and just get back to competing is when I started playing well again.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Next Season Podcast, episode 22. And my guest today is Jason Aspito. Jason was drafted out of high school by the White Sox, ended up choosing to attend the University of Texas, transferred to Loyola Marymount, was drafted again by the White Sox, was a AA All-Star, made it to AAA, played professionally for 10 seasons, putting up some really legit numbers in the process. And even though injuries derailed his playing career, he went on to become a college head coach. He's still now coaching young ball players, which is how I got to know him. He's a real estate investor, and most importantly, he's a husband, a father, an all-around good guy. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the value of being a multi-sport athlete, handling hard conversations and advocating for yourself respectfully and humbly, his baseball journey, all the ups and downs, and then finally his identity as a ball player and as a man. It was a great conversation. It was great to talk with him, and I know you're going to enjoy it as well. Jason Aspito, welcome to the Next Season Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you coming on. Don't get a chance to talk to you too often, and not often enough, but we're kind of in the periphery connecting on a bunch of different things. And so be able to sit down with you and talk about life, talk about baseball. It would be a good conversation.
Yeah.
So take me back to the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
Itasca, Illinois, a suburb about 15 miles from downtown Chicago.
Right. So Itasca, big city, small town?
Small town with a big city vibe, I guess, being so close to downtown.
Yeah.
People take the train into Chicago to work and all that. So I wouldn't trade where I grew up for anything.
Yeah. You make it back. You still make it back there at all?
I do. Most of my family's left. But my high school buddies and I are still very close. We all, they hang out all the time. And then when I'm in town, it's like I was never away.
That's awesome.
Group of guys.
Yeah. About how many people in your graduating class and how big of a town is it?
The junior high I was at was about 150 or so graduating class. And then town itself was 6,500. The public school I would have gone to was about, I think, 800 to 1,200 graduating class or more. And then I ended up going to a private school called Driscoll Catholic High School.
Were you there all 4 years?
Yep. Started there as a freshman. Actually, very good football and baseball program. We won a state championship my freshman year.
In football or baseball?
Baseball. I'm sorry. In baseball. Football, we were always a game away my career.
And you played both as a multi-sport athlete. At what point did you start to gravitate towards one sport versus the other between football and baseball?
So all 4 years I played both, and then I played basketball as well. But I would say not until I was a freshman in college, and even then I wanted to play football still, but probably not until I was a freshman in college where it was just baseball. Baseball, a lot of coaches were steering me towards it being safer on my body and different things like that. So there was always a love for it. It was just, which one did I want to do?
Yeah.
My best friend growing up, his name's Justin McCarrans. He played 8 years in the NFL. So we had some athletes and we were competing with each other on a daily basis, and it was awesome.
That's awesome. And position in baseball, so I know in football you were running back and defensive back. In baseball, at what point did you just kind of start to normalize a position that you would end up playing long term?
I pretty much was a shortstop on every team I played on. And then I was recruited as a shortstop. I was drafted as a shortstop out of high school. Really quickly learned that I wasn't going to be a shortstop much longer. I got to Texas and saw that everybody was pretty darn good. So they moved me to third. And then I was also moved to the outfield and kind of fell in love with both those positions.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about that, about, adapting and adjusting based upon the needs of the team. But another thing that's come up here, this recruiting process. And obviously The recruiting process is different now than it was for me and different now than it was for you. How do you compare that to today? Like, what was the recruiting process for you back then?
So today it is crazy. It felt like much stricter rules with when coaches could contact you and different things like that. I was fortunate. I had an older brother who played at St. Louis University, and he basically said, "Hey, if you want to play, you know, down south or at one of these big schools," because at the time, College World Series was the only thing on TV, at our house in June, and it was, yeah, I want to play for one of them. So go to a camp on the East Coast and go to a camp on the West Coast. And I went to a best in showcase. Virginia military and University of Virginia put on a camp that had about 40 schools working throughout the week. So it was an overnight camp. You did drills in the morning and you did games in the afternoon. It was kind of cool. They'd work with you and then they'd go see who they wanted to see play. Um, and and then I went to an Arizona State baseball camp. From there, I found out what the area code games were. Never heard of it or anything like that. And then got home from my Arizona State camp and got a letter to try out for the area code games, which was probably the biggest and coolest event that I ever played in. It was a ton of fun, top prospects all over the place, and every school and its mother and major league team there. And I played very well and got a ton of exposure from that.
So you end up getting drafted out of high school, and then you chose to not sign and you chose to enroll at University of Texas. So talk us through that decision process and then ultimately enrolling at Texas.
So it came down to Texas, Arizona State. I grew up kind of wanting to go to Arizona State. My cousin graduated from there, so I had family out there. I got more money to attend Texas, and my high school coach and parents were more on the Texas side, and I was kind of 18 and not in a whole lot of care of where. It was more like, hey, it's going to be good baseball, and it's how can I go wrong with Texas, or how could I go wrong with Arizona State? So I went to Texas.
Yeah. And what did you study at that time?
So I was a sports management major, minor in criminology.
Nice. Interesting mix.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to be an agent if I wasn't going to play in the big leagues.
So you roll at Texas and you go in as a shortstop. You grew up playing short, as you know, typically a lot of times that's where the most athletic players are. Not to say that there's not athletes all over the field, but oftentimes the requirement of the position is just somebody that can make all the plays, can have agility, run fast, it's got a strong arm, oftentimes a leader on the team. And so you have those skills, you have that background, and you get to Texas and it's full of studs. I feel like every time we go to a new level, the game speeds up, right? Like we just know that the game gets faster, the level of competition, who we're surrounded with. And so you've got a choice to make of whether you're going to, continue to fight for that position or adapt to what the team needs and look at other positions, including third and outfield, like you said. Was that easy for you? Was that a difficult process for you?
It's It's actually one of my favorite stories to tell is, so I got there, I was told and recruited I'd have every opportunity to win the shortstop job. I think I took one ground ball at shortstop and they moved me to third. And my college roommate was the starting shortstop. We came in together, but he was the shortstop after A-Rod at a school from Miami. And no doubt probably was the better shortstop. Me being the competitor would have loved to have lost that job and have probably taken the move much easier. But you eventually see it, right? But again, how do you go in and then trust the coaching staff that said you'd have every opportunity and not get that opportunity is when it becomes a little tougher, right? So, so, but my eyes told me I was probably the third baseman. So I was there 2 years. Had a up and down freshman year. Started as a freshman, hit over 300, did well in all the areas except for I made a few too many errors. And majority of my errors were throwing errors, and they were from just getting comfortable throwing from third base to first base. It was, some people do it effortlessly, that transition. Some struggle. A-Rod, when he first moved to third, I try to tell people that's kind of what I went through. He struggled with that throw a little bit. Not so much, it had nothing to do with arm strength. It was the angle of the throw, getting your feet right, and doing those things. So I struggled with that my freshman year. And The end of the year meetings was, hey, we're going to, think about you at third, but also want you to learn the outfield. So I went to summer ball and played a game in right field, and then I played the rest of the summer at third base. So I came in with six guys ready to take my spot at third. So real quick realized I'm going to be a outfielder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I, I kind of grew up kind of same thing. Into high school, I was typically a catcher and infield, middle infield. And then as we got into high school, kind of halfway through high school, started to have more playing time and opportunities in the outfield. And at first it's like, yeah, I can really do this. I remember playing outfield as a kid and I was not good. But in high school, I took to it and I loved it. I fell in love with it, just loved being out there, making plays, making the throws, you're still engaged, right? It's not like
right.
9-year-old baseball where you can put kids in the outfield. You're engaged. Like it is absolutely critical. And I fell in love with it too. So what was that transition like for you making that adjustment to the outfield?
Just learning where to go. And a little bit of it came easily because of being a middle infielder, shortstop, for cuts and relays and things like that. It's a little different with doubles and things like that. Yeah, I know I'm throwing to shortstop, but where will the runners be in that regard? But uh, as far as going and getting balls and different things like that, that came rather easy. And it really came rather easy because of football background, catching passes and doing things like that. So just seeing the ball in the air and taking proper angles and things. But little things I learned, but I usually learn them the hard way, like not diving for a ball with 2 outs and nobody on type of thing, because you want to keep the guy at first base, first let him get to second. But that's why I try to tell these kids, go play. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because those are the ones you learn and you won't make them again. You learn from those, where so many people are, I feel like in today's world, spoon feeding and trying to make these kids robots.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into that in a little bit. Um, so you were at Texas for 2 years, and then you end up going to Loyal Marymount.
I had a conversation with the head coach at the end of my sophomore year. For whatever reason, I had a good hitting year, both freshman, sophomore year. For whatever reason, my sophomore year, he would not let me hit against lefties. So I could be 2 for 2 in a game and not get an opportunity against a lefty. So I had the conversation saying, I want to play in the big leagues. I have to prove to people I can hit lefties. How am I going to do that if you're not going to give me a chance? And it was a tough conversation to have as a 19, 20-year-old, but I'm glad I had it. I went home. All of a sudden, I didn't have a spot on a Cape Cod roster any longer because I was transferring schools. Didn't know where I was going, but my sister was getting married. And the day of her wedding, I just so happened to be walking by the phone. It rang, and it was the coach for Loyola Marymount, Frank Cruz. And he said he got my name from the Texas assistant coach, that I could be a good fit there. And I was like, Coach, I'd love to chat. Hey, can you call me tomorrow? I'm getting ready to get in the limo to go to my sister's wedding. And he's like, oh yeah. They didn't know. It was kind of funny. But he called back the next day and they got me on a trip to Loyola, and just loved it, and it was awesome.
And this is an important thing to understand and concept, because I think a lot of times, especially now with all the transfers and the NILs, like I want to be very careful about making any judgments on people's decision making process. But your ongoing debate in this whole thing is about loyalty to a team and a program versus respectfully and humbly doing what's right for you as an individual, as a player. And you knew
Right.
going into your junior and senior year of college, you've got aspirations, you've got things that you're working towards as an individual, but also thinking about what's right for the program and being able to make that decision. So it sounds like you handled that the appropriate way. Any perspectives on kind of that process of what we're seeing today?
So I had the questions that for me I had to ask would I get an opportunity, right? So would I be given the opportunity to hit against lefties? If I wasn't going to get an opportunity, I had to then do what's best for me and seek somewhere where I would, right? So that part of it was, he's like, no, I don't see you hitting against lefties. I'm like, okay, so we're going to move in a different direction. He wished me well. I wished him well. Um, and that's how it kind of went. I could have handled if I got an opportunity and failed And I think too many kids are so quick to jump ship because they're not, getting an opportunity right away. They jump ship before they ask that question. Will I get an opportunity? If I don't get an opportunity, what do I have to do? And those types of things. I think a lot of kids leave a place now just because it's easy. Like then it wasn't easy to do. And there were rules in place where if you transferred inside the conference, you had to sit out a year. And that was the funny part for me. I was the first player that the coach at Texas never released. He wouldn't let me play for anyone inside the conference. So he must have thought I was decent somehow, but not good enough to hit against lefties. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's how I looked
So
at it.
I just want to reiterate that point because I completely agree with you. I think, it's if you have the conversation and you say, look, I want a chance, right? And if I fail, if I fall on my face, if I'm negatively impacting the team, I get it, but give me the chance. And if that opportunity is not there, then, I got to go somewhere where there is a chance. But, giving yourself that opportunity to have the conversation and not burn a bridge, not slam a door shut and not look for the easy button. Because I agree with you. I think too often right now, that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's crazy with the no money too, but I do think more kids are transferring just because they didn't play as a freshman. I think everybody's competitive, but for the most part, if people step back and look through a real lens and not their lens necessarily, they'll see that, hey, I'm 18, 19, and I'm competing against a dude who's 23. He's a little more physical than I am. I think I'm as good of a player, but I see why. He's been in the weight room for 4 years. You're competing against a man, not a kid any longer. So I think kids are so quick to jump after their freshman year, and it just doesn't make sense. But I, part of me looking at it, the college coaches haven't done the greatest job of addressing it and communicating. So I can go all day on that too.
Yeah. When I was talking to a college coach not too long ago about it, and I think so many of them don't even know how to, right, at this point and what's changing. But I think one of the things, and when I was having that conversation with him, and it relates to what you're describing, is, and what we're going to talk about next with you, is coming out of, is a junior or senior year, then you get drafted again.
It was my junior year. So one of the reasons I picked Loyola, one, I distinctly remembered flying out to play USC as a freshman and us driving past and seeing the LMU on a mountain. And, I remember Hank Gathers and that whole story and the basketball and stuff like that. So it kind of stuck in my head. And we played a kid who in the summer played against a pitcher, left-handed pitcher he was a dude. And I was like, he's legit. And then having the conversation, the coach is like, well, we have a potential, first rounder, top 5 pick pitcher and another potential first round catcher. So I'm like, well, if we're going to get that much action with scouts being at games, this is a great opportunity for me. And the beauty of it was with him, I felt like where at one point at Texas, I felt like I wasn't getting honest feedback and answers. To here, it was, hey, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I want to use you for a year, and you use us for a year.
Hmm.
You go off, you tear it up. We get to Omaha and win a World Series, and I was like, I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So it made that decision easy. And I got a ton of exposure at Loyola Marymount my junior year.
That's great. So the reason I want to bring that up now is because players can get away with this new culture of transferring, and we'll just call it the easy button sometimes. And it's not always, right? There's sometimes legitimate reasons. And so I don't want to put
Yep.
everything in that bucket, but sometimes it is an easy button. If your goal is to get drafted and work your way through the minors and the pros, that easy button isn't there anymore. So why
No,
press it when you're in college if you're not going to have the opportunity to press it? You're conditioning yourself to want that. And that's not how it's going to work in the pros. So you get drafted, a much higher slot, obviously this time around, and you begin your pro journey. What is that like for you?
So it was awesome. I was a little disappointed on draft day. I went the 9th round. I was being told by some that I would go no later than the 6th round. It is what it is. As a younger kid, I didn't have experience or didn't know anybody who's been through this process really as a mentor. But if we spoke briefly about what I might tell my younger self is you make your money in the big leagues, not in the draft day. So I would have said, just go prove everybody wrong. You know, 9th round was still well thought of and gonna get opportunities. So I found out after the 6th round, I went for a run because I wasn't the happiest guy around, and I found out my teammate called me and said, "Congratulations," and I was like, What are you talking about?" And he said, "You just went in the 9th round to the White Sox." So I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. They haven't called yet." So I hadn't spoken to them, or my agent hadn't spoken to them, and it was at that point, like a day later, it was awesome. I was drafted. Now I couldn't wait to start my pro journey. But there was a little disappointment at first, right? And it shouldn't have been that way. So I take how I handled that. I'd take that back if I could. But
Yeah.
you learn.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn. And I think that's part of being a competitor, right? Like that's just part of being a confident competitor.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you don't hear any of these quarterbacks say, "Oh no, I'm a 5th round pick," that are getting ready for the NFL draft. They all think they're top dog. So
Yeah.
I think you almost have to feel that way silently, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And like you said, okay, it's time to get to work. Now it's time to work, and kind of a full circle moment for you. You get drafted by your hometown team. Did that have
they
extra bonus for you?
they drafted me out of high school. So it was funny. They usually have to get something signed, and the White Sox never had this card signed. So I had a feeling they were interested again because my area code coach, who was the scout who drafted me, he had me. He's like, "Hey, you want to get drafted again by the White Sox?" I said, "I want to get drafted by anybody. I don't care what team it is." He's like, "Well, can you sign this card? Because you never did." So I had right before a game, sign some thing that would allow the White Sox to draft me. Otherwise, I could have like refrained from them drafting me a second time. Uh, um, so that was cool. And I loved my scout. He's great. We stay in touch a little bit here and there. So that that was cool.
Yeah. So now you're officially in the pros. You're signed. Where did you get your assignment for your begin your pro career?
So they send you to a mini camp before they send a lot of teams out. All the new drafts guys, if they signed in the period of time, they send them to a mini camp for like 3-4 days, which is basically it's an extended. All the guys who get left in extended spring training are there training, so you're kind of getting a feel for what pro ball's like. Um, so I got sent to Tucson, Arizona. I drove from California to Tucson, and then I was expecting to go to short season A ball with the rest of my draft class for the most part. Fortunately and unfortunately, I made some friendships with those guys or played against some of those guys, so we knew each other, and I got sent straight to the Midwest League, Burlington, Iowa. So I got to skip a level, which was great. What stunk about it was I wasn't with any of my buddies, and actually one of my former teammates at Texas was drafted in the 11th round, so we both got sent to the Midwest League, which was cool.
Yeah.
And Burlington, Iowa had a Applebee's, and that's about it. So it was a little bit of it, I was all excited for pro ball, and I was like, "Holy cow, what is this?" But yeah.
And at this point, you're full-time outfield, right? You're no longer playing third or short?
No, I was. So when I went to Loyola Marymount, I went there with the idea. I told them I thought I could possibly play shortstop, and there. So I basically played all over the place. So when the White Sox, I played third, short. I even played a game at first for Loyola. Center field, right field. I would say most of my games were in right field, but depending on what lineup he wanted to put out there, he put me wherever he needed to. If somebody was struggling, I kind of played that position, and then he jumbled his lineup around. So I played all over at Loyola. And then when the White Sox drafted me, they saw me as a utility guy. They actually wanted to teach me to catch. So I was playing third, right, potentially going to play some first and left field. And then they wanted to teach me to catch because of being a left-handed hitter. They saw me as an everyday guy, but at different positions, which was cool. That makes it fun, get a bunch of different gloves
Yeah.
and it makes it fun every day. So
We talk about that with some of the players that I work with on my son's team. So my son's 12, and you coached him. That's how we met.
oh, yep.
You helped coach him and do some lessons. So appreciate that. But we talk about that with his team. There's a lot of guys that they're still kind of in that, oh, it's the outfield, right? Or oh, it's this or that. No, this is an opportunity for you to get much more playing time. If you're versatile and you can go out there with the right attitude, and we use the same thing. It's like you can have a bunch of gloves in your bag. That's fun.
I always say, like, you look at the highest paid players other than a pitcher, a starting pitcher, the highest paid players are your outfielders in the big leagues. So there's something to be said for that. And then there's 3 outfielders on every team. There's only 1 shortstop. There's only 1 second baseman, 1 third baseman. I try to tell that to guys going into high school is like, look, just because you think you're a shortstop doesn't mean you're a shortstop.
Love it. Love it. At what point did the mental side of the game really start to come in? Because oftentimes your talent, and I say this to everybody, talent can get you noticed. Talent can get you in the door. Talent can get you the playing time. But the mental side of the game is what's really going to separate. Did you guys have the resources? At what point did you really start to apply the mental side of the game to what you were doing on a daily basis?
So I want to say it was my first full year in pro ball. I read a book called The Mental Game of Tennis, and that was recommended by my older brother. Um, I was I wasn't the biggest reader. I read because I had to more times than not, but that book resonated with me. It really helped me start to focus more on the process versus the result. I wish that the mental game was talked about as much when I was coming through as it is today. I wish and we had guys that they had sports psychologists, but it was more for I felt like it was more towards like guys who were having a family issue or having something that happened poorly, how to deal with that aspect, not just your performance based, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Where today they kind of focus on guys how they prepare and different things, and they have a mental guy in the organization for players to use at will. Some guys get their own, which is awesome. I believe the separator between AAA and big leagues, without a doubt in my mind, more times than not, and then being a little lucky in the right place at the right time. But the mental side of it is probably the least worked on from the ages 12 and up. I would say at 12 is when the kids actually start to really learn the game. And then they start to realize, hey, I didn't get my job done, or I made an out 2, 3 times in a row. So it starts to get draining. And it's working through that I say one of the biggest things for me, I was 12 years old. I always played up, but I was 12 years old on 13 on the big diamond, and I stunk. Like I was probably our worst hitter on the team, meaning I popped up a lot and I didn't know how to handle that. And I didn't handle it great, I don't think. But when I was the best hitter when I was 11 playing with 12-year-olds, I was highest average, this, that, and the other. And I just like, what happened?
Mm.
Looking back, it was because the mound was 10 feet further or 12 feet further for what we played, and the game slowed down. So I wasn't letting balls get to me. So I was swinging through and popping up, and it had nothing to do with my swing. It was just me not being patient enough. And I look back at it, I'm like, guys at 12 were probably like, this is the guy who played pro ball. It makes me laugh. Like I was good defensively and did a lot of things. So I had some ability, but it was like, wow. And then 13, I was back to being a better hitter, and 14 and all that. But I'll tell you, everybody's 12-year baseball year is supposed to be one of their best. It was probably my worst year playing.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of that into pro ball with me. Uh, and I tell all my lessons, look, the game beats you up, it spits you out. I retired. I retired once a year at least, where I'm like, this is it. I'm going home. And then when I'd stop worrying about, my performance and just get back to competing is when I started playing well again.
What did you
You
have to
know,
tell yourself in this moment?
sometimes just go have fun. Sometimes just like a day off did it. Sometimes you had to tell yourself you were the best player on the planet and lie to yourself for a day or two, and get it going again. And sometimes it was just, getting taken out of the lineup and seeing the game's not as hard as you're making it, and slowing it back down. Cause that's ultimately we really start to struggle is we start speeding things up instead of slowing it down.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It reminds me, you probably heard the story, but I played this for my son not too long ago. Kobe Bryant was talking about how and he was probably 11, and he went out and it was the same thing all season. I don't think he scored a bucket. I think the story was something like he got 2 points or like no points or something like that. And everyone's like, "This is your stud? This is the
Right.
kid you were talking about?" And it's Kobe, and some
Right.
people lean into that and say, "Here's where I'm gonna go with this," and other people say, "Okay, that's the end of the road for."
Yeah, it's a big adjustment, right? I tell kids all the time and parents that usually you see kids quit after 12. So they're going to the big diamond or their first year on the big diamond, and then you'll see them quit when they get their driver's license
Mm,
because now making money and having a girlfriend's more important than playing the game. So that's when you tend to see kids give it up.
yeah. So you journey through the pros, right? You get to work through, get to double A, get to triple A. I mean, that's a grind, right? That's the bus rides, that's the uncertainty.
So I had 2 full years, 2.5 years with the White Sox, got traded to the Angels, and I'm going back to A ball, and it didn't make sense to me, but it was like their way. It was a loaded team that they sent to A ball. All dudes who ended up in the big leagues: Mike Napoli, Casey Kochman, Tommy Murphy, Jeff Math. I mean, I can name Irvin Santana. All these dudes ended up being dudes in the big leagues. And then I get to double A and I end up having a knee surgery in double A, um, which was unfortunate. Actually, I had it after my last year or first year with the Angels. I go to double A and then I tear my quad. I was hitting really well, having a good go of it, and I tear my quad. Then coming back from that, I struggled. And then another year, I'm going to AAA. My knee blows up on me again. Have to have it scoped. And all the outfielders are tearing it up. So they send me to AA. And then finally, I get my opportunity in AAA. It was a grind. You got to stay healthy or get yourself healthy. When healthy, I felt I was a pretty good player. When not, I was an average guy out on the field. So you need some breaks. But the grind of every day showing up and you're playing with the best players in the land. That's the honest truth.
At what point did you start to see that there was the end of the road, coming up towards the end of the road?
So for me, it was kind of easy. I was a free agent, and the big league the hitting coordinator with the Angels was named Ty Van Berkeley. He ended up getting a big league hitting job with the A's. He was bringing me back. He had a conversation about having me come back to the Angels as a free agent. I said, I love it here. I would do it in a heartbeat, even for a little less money if somebody gave me more money. Well, he took the big league hitting job, and then I became a free agent, and I had 3 knee surgeries, so teams were a little standoffish. At least from my understanding, it was being told to my agent, "Hey, we like him, but he's got to prove he's healthy," this type of thing. And so I ended up in independent ball. Which I played with guys who were in independent ball. They get picked back up because they did well and things like that. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do what I can, and ended up in York with the Revolution. Put up a big year. I think 25 home runs, 105 RBIs, another 30 doubles. So I'm like, oh, I'm getting a job. When I didn't get signed after that year, I was kind of like, okay, that's probably it. I was gonna hang him up, but I had teammates from the year before talk me into playing one more year, and then I blew out my shoulder. So it was easy. Um, as far as hanging him up, it was time that the game. When you put up big numbers and nobody came calling, it was okay. Maybe this isn't in the cards anymore. And I would think I was 28, 29 years old.
Mentally, and, we see that the players that their careers end for a number of different reasons. Sometimes you get to call it, and sometimes it's fate, it's God, it's circumstance, whatever else that ends it. But oftentimes that transition to what you've done your entire life is now no longer there. A lot of players get their whole identities wrapped up into I'm a baseball player instead of as a person who plays baseball. What did you experience as you transitioned from being a ball player to what you're doing now?
It took me a while. That was what I was. I was a ball player. I didn't know any different. I didn't know what else I wanted to do. Wasn't sure if I wanted to get into coaching. I did want to give back to the game in some way, shape, or form because it gave me so much. I got to see the country. I got to, you know, play with some of the best players on the planet. And so it gave me a lot and it taught me a lot of lessons. So, but I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. I knew I had met my future wife and I was going to have to figure it out. So I got into coaching and doing private lessons, and then opened up my own space to give back to the game. And then, I was still around the game every day and teaching the game to be played the right way. Was my goal. And now I'm still doing that to an extent, but not under my own umbrella, and just helping kids get better, which is more what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So you transition out, you're a head coach at one of the Penn State schools for a couple of years. You open your facility, so you're coaching there. You get involved in real estate. So you're doing a bunch of different things. And like you said, now you're still involved in the game. What do you see is some of the biggest lessons? You've talked about some of them, but what do you see as some of the biggest lessons and most common things that you're talking about with some of the kids and athletes that you're working with today from the mental side?
So competing over a result, right? Because you may be 0 for 3, but your team wins. That you helped your team win. It's one of those. The goal is to win. It's a team sport with individual statistics. If you're helping your team win, that's the biggest thing for me. You find a way to help your team win. Mentally is focusing on the process over the result. Again, everybody focuses on the results. It's really, your results are going to come from competing versus focused on, hey, what's my batting average? If I get this, that was the hardest part in pro ball. When you're going good, you're like, man, if I keep this up, I might get called up. And all of a sudden now those numbers that were looking so good start to come down, and then you're trying to get back up there. So you're pressing. And that's when everything breaks down. I would also break it up, like for kids, break it up into like 10 at bats versus, and then eventually the whole season. So how'd I do my last 10 at bats versus, how I'm 0 for my last 20, how'd I do my last 10 at bats? Because little wins, little victories throughout the season get you where you want to go. I always tell kids I would have focused more on the positives and never looked at my batting average. Batting average goes up and down every day, where if you look at RBIs, runs scored, walks, those positives, they're only moving up. So those would be the numbers that I would concern myself with versus batting average. It's important. Don't get me wrong. It's still an important stat, but if you're focused on that, it's going to drain you mentally. And then you become a selfish player, right? You're more worried about your numbers than you are helping your team win a ball game. That the guys on the team aren't dumb. They know who's there to help and want to have their backs versus the guys who are just playing for themselves. And, when you're in locker room, it becomes pretty clear for everybody. So,
Yeah.
And that's the adjustment, in pro ball, everybody's got the same goal of reaching the big leagues. So there is a little selfishness at first until guys are like, look, we're all in this thing together. It's, just play. And that was the coolest thing when I got to the Angels. It seemed like a college camaraderie group of guys where all we wanted to do was win. And yeah, we all had numbers or didn't have numbers, but it was, man, the common goal was win games, and it just made everything more fun.
It kind of circles back to one of the things you talked about at the beginning of the conversation is this whole idea of fun. You got to be having fun. And when you're having fun, physiologically, actually, your body is able to play loose and free and natural, right? And so when we're in this state of stress and always worried about our own stats and always worried about our own numbers, not only does that have a negative effect, a negative impact on the team culture and the team chemistry, but it puts you in an elevated stress state and you can't play loose and free. And so now your numbers are going down. Teammates don't want to be around you. Coaches don't want to play you. And a lot of players, like, they just get stuck in this me mentality. Whereas if you can just take your eyes off yourself and think about the team and having fun and culture and chemistry, everyone's going to do better.
Yep. Yep. It's tough to do. It's tough to learn that, but that's 100% it. The guys, best hitter I ever played with was Howie Kendrick. And I will tell you, Howie Kendrick hit 400 into the end of July. He was hitting 408. I think he went 1 for 8 in a series and dropped his average to like 398 and then never to be heard from again in the minor leagues. So it was, the dude just showed up. He always seemed to be in a good mood and just play. I never felt like he was a kid who just got, or a guy, teammate who got, I mean, obviously he'd be frustrated. He missed a pitch that he should have drove, but it wasn't, he never looked like it affected him on a day-to-day basis. And I think that built his consistency in his approach and his consistency in his play. And, he worked on the areas that they questioned, and he became a damn good big leaguer, World Series champion, and an all-star in the big leagues, So it's pretty awesome.
He was one of my favorites to watch recently, and actually, so there was the World Series game when he was playing with the Nats a couple of years ago. He was having a rough day. I don't remember all the stats, but I think made an error or two on defense, maybe. But 0 for 4, 0 for 5 up to the point, comes up late in the game.
It's a double.
Yeah, and it wins it.
Yeah, opposite field, right?
Yep.
Like right center field gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was him. I mean, it's crazy. That's what I mean by him. Like, he might have taken an over here or there when I play with him, but it wasn't often, but you wouldn't know it. And he just barreled everything, and he was having an ugly game. And I remember that one distinctly. And I was so pumped for him as a former teammate, So
It's awesome. What's big in your life right now? Where's your energy going right now?
So you mentioned real estate. My wife's a realtor. Her and I, we flip homes a few times a year. We're all in the Airbnb a little bit, trying to increase our real estate portfolio, I guess. And then my two daughters both play travel lacrosse. It's been awesome to watch them grow. It's much tougher being the parent than it is the coach, to be honest with you. Uh, I have a lot of fun with them. They learned real quick. I don't care about how they play. It's their effort and attitude. If they're giving me effort and attitude, I'll never say a word to them. We can work on skill, and they've thrived in that. It's been cool. My oldest daughter, I don't even have to say play hard anymore. It's great. And my youngest one's a couple years behind, so she's on that path. But that's where my passion and that's where I'm at in my life.
Love it. In a few words, Jason, any key lessons that you have as an athlete that you're able to apply now with where your energy is right now in real estate and as a parent, as a coach?
I guess it's be willing to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. I mean, I enjoy the real estate. I don't know a whole lot about certain things, and sometimes there's calls you have to make that I'm probably not ready to make cold calls to homeowners or people who are struggling to try to help them out of a situation. Things like that. I'm not totally comfortable doing that yet, but just like anything else, I wasn't comfortable at third base. I learned to play third base. So, it's going to come. It just takes time.
Yeah. And you're going to have some bad
Yes.
throws.
100%. I'm sure I'm going to have some people cuss me out. I'm going to, all that good stuff. Yep. Yeah. I think last I would say is attack adversary. Adversity is a good thing.
Yeah.
A lot of parents want to step in. Kids, go solve your problem when it comes to baseball. Go fix it.
Yeah.
If you don't like how you're swinging the bat, go swing it more. Those are the things I would try to tell some of these guys.
Absolutely.
So,
yep. Big confidence builder is when your kids are able to overcome their own challenges and figure it out themselves. There's no greater way to build confidence than that, and no greater way to take away confidence than to do it for them.
right. Yep.
Where can people find you if you want to be found?
So I'm currently doing lessons at DC Sportplex in Dallastown. And I'm all over. I'm on Twitter, mostly at DC Sportsplex in the area.
Well, listen, Jason, it's been great to reconnect with you. I know you and I have some ongoing conversations about a few other things, and it's great to reconnect with you. Appreciate you taking the time, and I think so many lessons and perspectives about resilience, about embracing new opportunities and new challenges instead of fighting them, as well as standing up for yourself. I think oftentimes we talk about being coachable and being humble. I think a lot of times people kind of err on the side of being a pushover. And you demonstrated from your perspective about how you can advocate for yourself, but do it respectfully. So I think a number of key takeaways and key lessons I think are going to really resonate with our audience. I appreciate you taking the time to chat this morning.
Thanks for having me. Tell everyone hello.
Will do, man.
All right.
I appreciate you.
All right.